Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Arete Podcast. I'm Richard Triggs and today's conversation is a little different and a lot of fun. Joining me is Teva Smith, communications strategist, content creator, and one of the most refreshingly authentic personalities online right now. We unpack personal branding, social media, fractional careers, creativity in business, and why being more human might just be your biggest competitive advantage. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello Teva. It's been a little while in the making, but it's great to have you along for the Arete podcast because I think I tripped over you. I don't even remember how. On Instagram a couple of months ago, maybe 3 months ago, we're talking about some really interesting things, and I thought, wow, that's fascinating. I can't wait to talk to this lady, and now here we are.
Yeah, Richard, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, you discovered my online persona and then discovered that I'm actually like that in real life too.
Well, I find it fascinating. As a very new entrant to Instagram, my business has been very LinkedIn orientated. To now get onto Instagram and just these wild and interesting personalities, and with your backstory and what you're doing professionally and how you're tying it in with what you're doing on Instagram, yeah, amazing. So really keen to unpack all of that. So before we sort of get into it, what's happening in your world right now? What are you up to?
Oh, well, right now I am doing quite a wide range of things. Everything from fractional communications with schools and associations and other businesses, which is really my professional background, to content creation for businesses, working with a friend of mine who's a known media personality on content packages for companies, and just exploring the creative world a little bit more than I did before outside of my more constrained professional career.
Good. Well, let's talk fractional firstly, because fractional wasn't really even a word a couple of years ago. There were certainly people talking about interim. You'd go in and you'd fulfill a role while somebody was on, maternity leave or while somebody had resigned. And, but fractional now is very much about, you take a role on, you might work fractionally as a chief marketing officer, for example, your kind of role for 2 or 3 companies. And so they would present you as, here is our marketing manager, Teva Smith, but, you might do it. It's becoming very prevalent, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly has taken off a lot over the course of my career, which is about 23 years now. You're right, it certainly wasn't something that was talked about even recently. But I would say over the last couple of years, as you say, because you can see the hiring trends as well, businesses don't necessarily have the budget to employ someone at a high level full time, but they really need the strategic input and someone who understands how to connect things from a CEO level down to an operational level.
Yeah.
But also needs a little bit in between. So you're not just hiring someone at a junior level who can post your social media things. You need someone to understand how it all ties together, but don't necessarily want to put the risk of a full-time hire onto their business bottom line. So there's definitely more people in my position, particularly once you get to a certain level of experience where you can go, hey, I can step into this role. I can pick up the information on your company really quickly because I've been doing this for a long time, and provide real value to you without the company having the risk.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's not necessarily just a financial thing. I mean, businesses might say, I don't have enough for Teva to do.
Yep.
Right? I have enough for her to do, 1 day or 2 days a week.
Yep.
So it's not even about a financial motivation. It's like, if I was to employ her, she'd be bored. So if I can give her enough, but she does that, with multiple organizations, you get the benefit of, the flexibility, but also the interesting, you're working for a recruitment company today and a school tomorrow and a manufacturing business on Wednesday or whatever. I think I'm staggered. It's interesting. We we advertised just prior to Christmas, if you're a former C-suite executive and you are looking for fractional work, let us know. And we had over 750 applications
Wow.
within like 2 days.
I think people are also interested in the change that it provides. So, I could go in and run a project for 6 months that's really to do with a specific event or a
Yeah,
specific rebrand or something that the organization needs that they won't necessarily need long term, but they really need specific support on that. And then it gives you a whole different creative license and keeps you stimulated and learning, where at a point in your career, if you stayed with the same company, you might not be learning as much because then you're in senior management and all you're doing is people managing.
completely. Yeah, I agree. There is great benefit on both sides of the sort of equation, isn't there? So, Teva, let's get back into that in a bit more detail a bit later in this conversation. Let's talk about your backstory. So,
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about, where you were born and your early life and leading up till now, and
sure.
let's learn more about you.
Well, I'm from a little bit of everywhere. I grew up in South Africa and moved to Australia just after I finished high school, moved with my parents. Lived here for a few years, living the high life as a teenager in Surfers Paradise. Back in its heyday when it was still a great place to go out. And then I went off to England, ostensibly backpacking for 6 months, and came home 9 years later.
Uh-huh.
And came back to Brisbane because it was the closest professional hub, I guess, to the Gold Coast where my parents lived. And I have always loved creativity. And in the UK, I fell into pharmaceutical PR and marketing for a really internationally well-known pharmaceutical company, and just did a lot of sales marketing. It was very fast-paced. It was very interesting. Creativity was a little bit hampered by regulation in a pharmaceutical industry, so there was a little bit of that. And then when I moved back to Australia, pharmaceuticals are all down in Sydney, or at least they were then. There's some smaller companies up in Brisbane now. So I had to find a new avenue, really, and started working in education, which I absolutely loved, because working in independent education in Australia, there's always really interesting things happening in schools. They have a lot of different stakeholders, everything from your events to students to parents to alumni. And over the last year or so, I had some really massive life changes and started to reevaluate where I could use more creativity in my life. It's always been a driving force of mine. I studied film for a while. I was always fascinated with moving stories and how they were made and the music that brought them to life. And art was always a passion of mine. So trying now to merge the two things together with a very strong professional career on the one hand and a really interesting creative outlet personally on the other hand. So that's kind of where I am, but really, really driven actually by human to human connection is my main passion, and how we can, I guess, cut through a lot of the digital space at the moment and remember that we are people, and how do we connect to people in a world that is massively bombarded with 900,000 digital things happening every day. And if you step back out of it, how are we connecting to each other? And that's what I try and bring into both my professional communications and my personal brand.
Yeah. So if I talk about my own experience with you, I can't even remember, but I saw one of your videos. I think it was around dating yourself, and I thought, oh, this lady seems really fun and interesting, and I followed you on Instagram. As I say, I was only a very recent entrant to Instagram, and now pretty much every time I turn on Instagram, your story is the first thing on my feed and so on, and I love it because it's so fresh, and it's kind of a bit vulnerable without being too sort of. I mean, some of the stuff people post is I can't even imagine why they would possibly do that, but what you're doing is so it's fun and it's fresh and it's interesting, and so how did you come up with the sort of idea of, was it purely I just want to do this thing and it turned into potentially a professional career, or was there intention behind it? And I'm interested in understanding, how you're using that as a platform to build and present yourself as somebody to do that for others, because it's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love that you see my posts and that they do make you laugh. I really aim for a fairly irreverent, tongue-in-cheek tone. Sometimes more vulnerable than others. Sometimes, and actually all the time, it's really my real life. I just am very tongue-in-cheek about things that are happening in my real life. I started making the videos sometime last year for fun because I love making videos. I love putting music to them. I love finding the little point that's going to be interesting to people from my own experience of watching online content. And it gave me a beautiful creative outlet to lean more into that side of myself. I was working in an environment where I had to be a little bit more constrained. And then what happened was I was just doing things that I thought were funny, not because I intended to become a content creator. And it started landing well with people. And I think that that is a great demonstration of authenticity. Now, the word authenticity is vastly overused at the moment. It's such a buzzword because really my authentic self is going to be a little bit different depending on the environment that I'm in. Because I am in a professional environment, there is a certain level of professionalism that I need to bring in to my clients or my workplace or whom I'm interacting with. And in my personal life, there is a different level of authenticity, but my core character is the same. And so, yes, I wasn't really expecting to develop anything out of it. But then what has happened is I have had people contact me to ask me about content creation, and then started actively pursuing leads on content creation because it's so exciting to me to look at a brand or look at a person who's developing a personal brand and think about their unique element and who they're trying to talk to and what story I can tell to connect the two together. It's so exciting to me that I could just do it for hours. And I think that that is such a great demonstration of a line of work that you should try and pursue if it lights you up and gets you moving in there through the day. So it's kind of where I am. So just exploring that now, and really the thing that gives me an advantage is that I've been a professional communicator for so long that I have a really good understanding of people, what people are looking for, how to tell a story, how to get a message to land, that a 22-year-old content creator just isn't. They will look at the algorithm, but if they are trying to actually connect with people on a deeper level, there needs to be a little bit more of an understanding, or a lot more of an understanding as to what that is.
Yeah, look, I agree completely. I think one of the most interesting things I found about you, in seeing your content and then looking at your LinkedIn profile and your background and so on, is that, you've been working within private girls' schools or private schools, and they have a certain, I imagine, perspective about how they're presented to the market. And then your own presentation to the market, it's certainly not crude or anything, but it's very vulnerable, and you're talking about dating and all those kind of things. And the thing to me, which I found so keen to understand, was, how do you do both simultaneously without potentially creating an issue for your professional career because of the way that these schools might perceive how you're presenting yourself, on Instagram.
Yeah. It is an excellent question, and it is certainly something that I am aware of every day. But I have spent a very long time in the professional world, and I have such confidence in the way that I present in that world and my understanding of how to work with clients, how to work with businesses in a way that respects their brand and what they are trying to put out to the world, that I feel confident in being able to deliver that for them. But at the same time, as long as I have very strong integrity with the content that I am delivering, which is never offensive and never could be construed to be reputationally damaging.
Yeah.
I've worked in the business of reputation for, like I said, almost 23 years. So I know what reputation is worth. And it's what I work on with my clients, but also work on for myself. We are working in a world that is going at hyperspeed at the moment. And the very traditional framing that we have about a person only being allowed to have one life, and that life needing to really represent their business life, is not where we are going at the moment. You know, we spend a lot of time in work, absolutely, but also the interconnectedness of our personal life and our business life is undeniable now.
Yeah.
So I actually, having a personality online has actually won me work. In the world of the very traditional schools and very traditional associations, there certainly will be businesses for whom me having a personality will be, I guess, a little bit too much. And I really had to reflect on that when the words too much are used, because they will be used, they will be chucked about, they will always be chucked about in relation to a woman. You never hear a man be called too much. They are called assertive and ambitious and full of character. And so yes, there is a blending of the personal and the professional, but I really want to embody this side of my professional life, and that filters through to my whole life if I can merge the two successfully.
Yeah, look, I understand what you're saying. Perhaps to be a bit of a devil's advocate or push back a little bit on that. I mean, there are certainly men in business who are judged because of how they present themselves. I mean, from the Elon Musks, smoking a joint on Joe Rogan to, the everyday business owner and so on. I don't think it's a male-female thing, potentially, but definitely I think that business people in general have this expectation that if I want to be taken seriously, I have to always be on point.
Mm-hmm.
I can't let my guard down or let my hair down and, reveal, things about myself. For example, your videos, here I am dating myself, right? That's quite a departure from the public relations / communication marketing manager for a private girls' school, right?
Yes.
I think it's awesome, right? That was why I was immediately engaged, because I went, wow, like here's a person who is like their truth, right?
Yeah.
But that's a rare thing,
Yeah.
male or female.
Yeah, you're right. It is definitely a rare thing, and it definitely takes some courage and a huge amount of vulnerability to put your life out there. And certainly there is a caution to anyone who is putting anything online to say, all right, is it illegal? Is it offensive? Is it painting yourself out to be completely unprofessional? If you know that would reflect very badly on you professionally, I would
Yeah,
suggest don't do it. Don't go drinking all day, drive a boat around and fall over and knock your head and then post it because it's funny. Because it's going to reflect badly on you. You're going to look irresponsible, all of that kind of thing. So I'm cautious in my content that it is funny and irreverent, but it is personal. Yes, it is absolutely personal. In the world of marketing, it is a very full market. There are a lot of people. There are a lot of junior people coming through into the marketing and communication space. So the competition actually for jobs is pretty fierce, because it's a lot of the times it's a generalist profession. And at some point you have to pick a way to differentiate yourself. Now, whether schools will look at the extensive experience that I have in this area and then look at my personal brand and go, oh no, it can't possibly. That's probably an indication of wrong fit. That's probably an indication that if they want very, very traditional, I would struggle in that environment anyway, because they won't want to do anything different in their communications professionally either.
yeah. Look, I understand that, and I think that there are certain people who will be gravitating towards what you offer and others that won't. And that's the same as me in my recruitment business and so on. You know, you're positioning yourself now as, okay, I've built this sort of online persona for myself. Let me help other professionals to do that too.
Yep.
Right? So, you know, let's assume that an owner or a CEO of an organization comes to you and they say, look, Teva, I want you to support me and assist me in developing out, you know, this online presence to really build business. How does it work?
Well, the first thing we have to do is talk. We need to have a really solid conversation about who you are. Why do you want to improve your brand? Let's talk about you as a human being. Let's talk about what you love to do as work. Let's talk about what worries you about being on camera. Personal brand is a whole gamut of things, but right now, putting your face out there is probably top of the list. And then we have to work on practice. We have to practice because, wow, it is hard when you're in front of a camera the first time. Hell, the first 100 times you film yourself. It is going to be awkward as hell until one day it doesn't feel so awkward. And that day when it doesn't feel so awkward is when you're ready to start putting your content out. You know, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get it nailed all the time, but you have to put the work in before you start trying to represent yourself. So there's a lot of conversation about who you are as a human being before we start talking about what your messages are and who the clients are that you're trying to reach with those messages. And then it's practice. And then, you know, I would suggest to everyone, get some help from someone like me or someone else. Social content is an avalanche that is not slowing down. But, you know, if you envision an avalanche coming down a hill, someone's chucking a helicopter in and a chalet and a small house and a bomb and some glitter and a mountain. And you have to learn how to navigate those because literally every day the algorithm on whatever social platform you're on is changing. So get some help and then let them guide you a little bit and then have a plan. But first step, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I think the thing that I really like about what you've been doing as compared to others, other people, many of whom I know and they're great people and I love them, you know, their videos are very much about, look at me talking about my business and how I can help you. You know, I'm a naturopath and I'm going to talk about diet or I'm a whatever. But your content is not about you, but from the perspective of let me do social media marketing for you. You know, it's about, you know, my kids and my life and my, you know, it's a very unique take.
But I think that is the humanizing of the world that we live in. You know, like I said before, we are overloaded with things that we should learn and do better at. And people are constantly trying to sell stuff to us just all the time. So when someone just has something interesting or funny or a human take on something that's just them being a person, it's very attractive. And also, like I said, we're losing the human to human connection. So lots of people might know what you do as a business, but who are you? How do you operate on a day-to-day level? Who are the people that you work with? How do you get along? Who's got a favorite chicken sandwich for lunch and everyone else hates chicken because, you know, they're so bored of Bob bringing it in every day? You know, what are the actual things that are happening in our lives that connect us? And that way, that's how you build trust and relationships because we're all humans. We've all spilled coffee on our keyboards before.
Right. Yeah, and yet I have this huge kind of disconnect. So, for example, I'm a musician. I'm studying a Bachelor of Music degree and I play gigs and, you know, I hang out with these 18-year-old musicians and we have so much fun. But I have this block in my head that if I was to put that online, like here's Richard who's going to recruit your next C-suite executive, but here's a video of him, you know, playing with a 18-year-old girl singing in a bar in Fortitude Valley. To me, I have this huge resistance that, you know, why people would probably like, why would I trust this guy to recruit my CEO? You know, so what you're saying is completely counter to that, isn't it?
I'm not saying you don't have to back it up with professional proof.
Oh, of
You
course.
know, you have to have professional proof that what you can do is what you can do.
Yeah.
But you do that anyway. And then you
Right.
give yourself a human side where, you know, Chris, who runs, you know, a small furniture, well, Chris, who runs like a medium furniture importation business, and he needs a new general manager, and he's played the guitar his whole life, you know, he connects to you then on a human basis and then backs that up with all of your professional credentials. And there is a way to do both. You might do a post on, you know, why it has been really difficult to recruit for a certain role. And then interspersed in that is some of your personal stuff. And that is really a mix of things that you have to decide on and then intentionally do. But it is us being people that we have forgotten about. We are so busy trying to sell something, trying to sell a business. Because of course, we all need to make money, we need to pay rent, we like to, you know, live a comfortable life. But we've lost ourselves in that. People lose themselves in their jobs, in their work, incrementally. And this is a way to get it back if you do it responsibly and you do it authentically.
Great. So let's put a slightly different lens on this conversation. So this podcast goes out to about 140,000 people a week, right?
Yep.
The vast majority of those are people who are aspiring to become a C-suite executive or a CEO,
Yep.
right? Because that's obviously the business I'm in. So if you look at somebody who says, look, I have aspirations to be a CFO, for example, how much a part of supporting their aspiration is building a social media presence, and how could you support them in doing that? Because, you know, I would have said historically, you know, if you're an aspiring CFO, you just need to be really good at, you know, balance sheets and P&Ls and et cetera, et cetera. But more and more now, you know, to cut through, if we were to run an ad, you know, we're recruiting a CFO for Rio Tinto or whatever, we might get 200 applicants.
Yep.
Now, what part does their social media presence play? And what can you do to, you know, accentuate that in order to give them that extra leverage?
Well, I would say that your entire online presence and the way that you are applying for a job is vital. You can't just submit a CV anymore. You need to make an impression. You can't just make an impression by writing a fancy cover letter. You need to make an impression as to who you are. How are you going to stand out from those 200 people? So there's two elements to this. One is, how are you going to stand out from those 200 people? Is there something that you can do face to face? Can you drop something in? Can you make a phone call? Can you send something in the post? But from an online presence perspective, before you start applying for a job, what are you doing on LinkedIn? Now, LinkedIn has a whole lot of its own algorithms, but certainly as a platform where it's a repository for professional content. Now, how much that professional content is consumed is kind of determined by LinkedIn, who changes things all the time and did just last week. But what will happen is any employer worth their salt will go and look for any other online presence that you have. Now, Facebook is still relatively closed unless you make your profile public. You can do that on any platform, but if they want to get a sense of who you are as a person, then there are ways that you can build that into your social media, where if you love dogs, you can easily just put a post up talking about things that you might think about professionally. Have your dog with you. This is not everything has to be as, you know, loud as I am socially. You would make it an incremental sidestep from where you already feel comfortable in a way that you feel is going to back up whatever reputation you are building professionally. That gives you a human element, because they can see your professional kudos. They can see your professional kudos on your resume. They can go onto your LinkedIn, check all of that out. You would probably start with LinkedIn, work onto a next profile from that, and start getting comfortable just doing a little clip here and a little clip there, or commenting on something else that someone has done in that space that makes you look like you have an opinion on something that's not a long form text essay.
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. My little brain is cogitating as we're talking here because, for example, I have a podcast. You're now on it. And I've done 200 odd episodes. And what I like to do is, if I'm recruiting for a business, is to put the CEO or the owner on the podcast to talk about their background and the history of the business and the vision, the values, and the culture. And when candidates listen to it, the receptivity to the opportunity is so much higher because they go, oh, wow, this is a person that I'd love to work for.
That's right.
What we're talking about now in real time is imagine doing that as the employee.
Totally.
How do you create this kind of suite of awareness that an employer would go, wow, I would love to employ Teva as my CMO, my fractional CMO, because, wow, she's such an interesting person.
And that my sister has worked in this space for a long time in terms of right fit. You as a business owner or a CEO are looking for someone who is going to fit into your business, not just from the capability perspective that they have, but from the personality perspective that they have.
Yeah.
Are they interested in this industry? Are they going to bring something that's going to lift us? Are they going to fit into the team that we have?
Yeah.
As humans, we can assess that pretty quickly if you have an opportunity to see a little bit of someone. Now, what tends to happen is you go for an interview. Oh no, you submit your CV, you get shortlisted, you might be asked to send in like the answer to a video question. Now, most people's answer to a video question is this. Hi, I'm Sally. I've been a CTO for 17 years. I really love technology. It's such a great opportunity to come and work for your company. I think that I really like your values. All right, thanks. Sally has not presented herself probably how she is in the rest of her life.
Yeah.
That's all you get. So now someone's going to see that and go, no, she's not for me. It's like a dating app. Just swipe over it.
Yeah.
And, she's not going to fit. So
Yeah.
you lost that because you haven't practiced what your camera presence looks like. You haven't practiced how you show up, how you want to show up. And also you're right about the interviewees that you have on your podcast. The interview is both ways. When candidates see that, they're like, oh, no, he's not for me. Or, yes, love what he's saying. Can't wait to work there.
Yeah, look, I think that's so true. We're kind of diverging, but it's a fun thing to explore. I wrote a book, Winning the War for Talent, and I talked to employers about the fact that, your LinkedIn profile needs to be compelling. Why would somebody want to work for you? Now, in a lot of LinkedIn profiles, they're very, they're just a sort of a career summary. There's little content. There's no evidence of, why you're an awesome boss. Look, my little brain's ticking here, Teva. I think we need to put our heads together. There could be some good opportunity here. But, coming back to, you, with everything you're doing on Instagram and obviously, the work that you're wanting to pursue, both consultant and fractionally, if people wanted to engage with you, how should they do that?
My website is tevasmith.com. And whilst my website talks a lot about schools and associations, I do help other businesses outside of that. So book in a call or email me. As you can tell, I love a chat. I love getting to know people. I love digging underneath the first question that you ask to the next question to the next question. And I promise you that if you have a meeting with me, you will leave that meeting feeling like you can tackle a whole lot of stuff in your life.
I can attest to that personally, and I must apologise. I've been saying Teva, but it's Teva.
Oh, that's okay. I get both, but yes, it's Teva.
Right. Is that short for something, or is?
Oh, do you know, my parents were hippies, and so they just cursed me and my poor sister. Her name's McHugh. They just cursed us.
Right.
And it's definitely a good conversation starter.
Yeah.
but I did go the other way, and my children are Daniel and Alex.
Right, okay. Very good. Well, Teva, before we wrap things up, is there anything else that you wanted to speak about today, or any point?
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really hope that this just reminds people to be a little bit brave with themselves and their characters, and to remember that creativity is a strategy. It is not just a fun piece of fluff on the side. You can use it absolutely to your advantage, and I can help you do that.
Yeah, I think the one word that you landed on there, which is so important, it's got to be fun, right?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
but work can be so mundane and so boring and so uninspiring. But if you bring some fun to it,
Absolutely.
and that I've got to admit, one of the things that most attracted me to your videos,
Yeah.
they're just good, wholesome fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I am genuinely having a great time making them. It is my genuine sense of humor. And making that content brings fun to my life every day. And reading the comments are absolutely hilarious.
I do enjoy some of your videos where you read out some of those comments.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I suppose because of the style of content, you must attract a lot of idiot men who.
Do you know, the internet will internet. There are some very brainless comments, but I take it all with a pinch of salt and just think, people have better things to do in their lives. Well, I have better things to do in my life than take offense to things. If those people don't have anything good to write, that's sad for them. I'm still going to have a great time. And just let it, roll off my back and have a bit of a laugh.
Yeah, look, as you're talking, I kind of think it's not dissimilar to if you're an artist and you paint a painting and you hang it in an exhibition. Some people are going to stand in front of the painting and go, I don't like this painting.
Yep.
And other people are going to go, oh my God, this painting's amazing. So if you put your creation out there, then you have to accept the fact that there are going to be, people who love it and people who don't. And
absolutely,
it is what it is, right?
Yep, totally is. I'm not going to fight a war that I can't win. I'm just going to go out there and hopefully make people smile every day.
That's right. And, share this impassioned opportunity for people to bring more fun into their lives.
Absolutely. I will be there with my pom-poms. Invite me in. I will even bring coffee.
Well, I look forward to catching up with you again soon and hearing more about your exciting adventures.
Thank you, Richard.
For now, have a fantastic afternoon.
I will, and you.
All right. Thanks, Teva.
Bye.
Bye.